So I believe it's recording, so. Okay, first order of business, public comment. Eric.
I know the board has been considering how to invest in the auditorium over the last few sessions, and I just want to make a couple of comments on the thoughts I had on that. Really, two comments. The first is, I know today some documentation got sent out about policy. In my experience, that's probably second, third, maybe fourth on the list of things that probably need to be done. One of the things I would suggest that needs to be done first, for the board to consider, is setting a strategy or even a goal or a vision for what's going to be used, how the auditorium is going to be used. So for instance, over the last couple of sessions, there's been back and forth on whether the goal was to mix money with the different bids, or whether it was just to bring people into the auditorium using a variety of different methods, different types of shows, that kind of thing. So if you set a strategy and a goal and a vision, it would help people understand what the goal is. And then once you get through that, figure out what your strategy is, figure out how you're going to measure whether you're succeeding or not, that kind of thing, then you probably get to policies. That would be a suggestion just based on my experience. Related to that is my second point, which is a lot of the conversation has been around about how to use the auditorium for shows and events. If you're going to set a vision or a goal, one of the things I would suggest you consider is there are a whole variety of ways to use that. So an alternative vision, for instance, could be lean really heavy into the history. Take the money that, rather than hiring people to come in or for a director for organizing events, hire a historian for the summer. And maybe they can create a curriculum, maybe they can create more history, lean into that. And I understand that there are different groups in the village that are in that, like 83 and Warless. But I would suggest that having all three groups pulling in the same direction would be far stronger than just having the volunteer groups do that. And I'm not necessarily thinking that that's the only path, like there are three viable paths. But if you're going to consider a strategy or a vision, just keep your minds open and maybe think about it a little bit more than just a butts and seats approach. And I understand that people want the auditorium used, but there's a whole variety of ways that they can use. So those are just my own statements. So thank you.
Anyone else in the audience here? Yes, in the back.
Yeah, I had a question. I was just
Could
wondering.
you identify yourself, please?
Robert. I was wondering why we're paying performers to come to the auditorium. It seems to me it should be the other way around. And any money we're spending that should be used to maybe fix up the auditorium. I kind of like to get an explanation of why we spend money to get performers to come here. It should be they pay us. And as far as splitting, taking a portion of the ticket fees, it seems to me again that should be the performers' responsibility. If we're splitting tickets, then we have to worry about advertising and things, and that's just, I think, beyond what we should be doing. Rather see us charge a fee and let the performer deal with how many tickets they sell. If they can't fill it up, it's on them.
Thank you. Is that it? Thank you for those comments. Moving on to reports, superintendent.
Yeah, what we're doing now is just working on equipment, getting everything caught up. That problem with the backhoe and the hood mechanism, got a break in the plow. We're working on equipment. One of the things, though, I'd like to bring up again is we have two employees. One is, I believe, 77, the other is 78. And we need to get somebody to replace these guys. If they leave at the same time, which it's looking like they're going to do, there's all this knowledge and we're gonna have a hard time training somebody when you can't be in a truck with them and you can't just send them out and everybody's got a designated route already. And just everyday workings of the village. So I'm recommending, I've only got a few years left myself. I mean, I could be here 2 or I could be here 10, I don't know, but you're in need of an employee to replace these gentlemen. I'm gonna let it go. You got a lot on your agenda here, but I think that the village board should start thinking about this because time is limited now. I mean, we're at the end where I had to ask one employee to make it this winter. He didn't even want to do it. So it's not a good position to be in. It's not a good position for this village.
So these are the 2 part-time employees.
Yes.
So what are you suggesting?
You should hire somebody. I mean, we're not in the position where, like with Malta, I mean, I might as well say it because we have these conversations at highway superintendent's meetings all the time where they have problems with employees because they have so many employees that all year round, you know, we don't have that problem. I mean, we had one problem with one employee missing too much time. I talked with him, that was resolved. He gave me his side of the story, why he was actually kind of depressed because of the situation. But nonetheless, it told him, you know, look, it'll get better. You got a nice raise, just work through it, you know. But we need an employee. If we miss just one guy,
We need one full-time employee?
I recommend it. If we miss just one guy during a snowstorm, we're down a truck. Just one guy, that's it. That's all it takes. So luckily over the years, I mean, everybody's pretty dedicated, sick or not, they come to work. But now we're at the point where the other guys they're older. They can't do the hours. I mean, I have to wait for the snow to build up, so I'm out by myself with the other 2 guys, and then I call them in because they, you know, the hours it's hard when you're that age. I mean, I don't have.
So are they so you would want someone part-time or full-time, and is it seasonal or is it?
I think you should get a full-time period, full-time person. And I don't foresee Mr. Luce being here much longer. I mean, his hours, he doesn't work. What he does is he comes in and what he does is critical though, because he's hauling all our debris out, all our leaves, all our millings, because we now resurface the roads, so we mill them. So that's good, but I just don't know how much longer he's going to be doing it. So we need to look for somebody, even while they're here, because it's going to be extremely hard to train somebody when they're not here. You're gonna what are you gonna do? Just throw them in a truck and here you go?
Has either one of them already voiced, oh, I'm gonna retire,
Both.
my countdown clock started, have they voiced that?
Clock is ticking.
I think
No,
John has had.
that's not what I asked.
had
I
to
know
talk
you're
about it.
assuming that, but they verbally stated that.
Yeah, the one guy doesn't want to work the winters no more. And that was Jack. And then Mr. Luce is, you know, he's like, this is probably my last winter. He's already let his water license go. And
So, just a thought, I mean, I understand you have to keep who you have, but we have to get somebody in the training, so would it be more bringing somebody in, they train, and maybe they cut back their hours to let the new person, after they get trained, after a certain period of time, that they can start cutting back their hours if they're not needed, that way we're not paying for an entire additional employee?
yeah, Mr. Luce has already done it. He only comes in when needed, you know, because he's at that age where basically I have him drive a truck, you know, and that's really, you know, our running to get parts. That's what he does.
So then the trade-off is rather than you working a lot of overtime, we'll be paying this new employee to help even things out.
It would be an even out. I mean, get somebody to like ride around in the truck with me or Mr. Luce, you know, or, you know, to go in different trucks so to learn.
Right, I know during the training period, you know, it takes time to learn all these things, but once he's trained and, you know, you don't have to work as many hours to make up for Mr. Luce who's not working, it kind of evens itself back out.
Yes, yeah, that would be a good way to look at it, yeah. You know, like I said, of course, Jack said it last year, but this year, he said it again, and I asked him, you know, just, stay the winter, and he didn't get a hard time, 'cause he's dedicated. And he's a good person, and he doesn't want to leave everybody else hanging.
My impression, from speaking to both of them, is that they walk out if we were covered.
Yeah, I believe they would.
We were covered.
I mean, I don't want to say it that way, but I believe the only reason why they're here is because I'm here. That's what they tell me. That's, they don't want to leave me hanging.
I mean, I certainly agree and recommend that we pursue a full-time employee.
Now's the time to do it in budget time, so we sit down and
Yeah.
look at the numbers.
Well, I think you're gonna be in.
Maybe next winter before you find somebody.
We got the new Salter.
We do. We have the new Salter.
Everybody's looking.
Actually had it out for its maiden trial. Everything went well. It's identical to all the other Salters we have, except for this one's stainless steel. So on the next truck we order, we're gonna order stainless with it. We're waiting for the price to come back now. My thinking on it is we'll probably have to Salter the life of the truck rather than have to replace it in 15 years or so. So it'll pay for itself.
Okay, treasurer.
Okay, so I emailed the monthly financial report to all the board members before the meeting. A quick update on the water project. Financing for the EFC water system improvements project has come to a close. The village has borrowed $212,060 to be paid back over 20 years. I did email the debt service schedule to each of you, so you could check that out.
Now, the EFC, excuse me, just that we borrowed 212, but we got the 60% from the state.
Yes, I don't have the actual figure in front of me, but it was a really good
So we
deal.
were
It was something
responsible
like
for
380.
40%, and that's what this represents.
Right, it's 500,000 something thousand.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do have 3 resolutions that I need. Number 1, the 2001 Rescue 1 boat and trailer have been sold to the Village of Half Moon. Payment has been received in the amount of $4,900 and deposited into the general fund. The chief has requested use of these funds for future fire equipment purchases. Resolution is requested to increase the fire equipment expense account A3410.2 and sale of equipment revenue account A2665, both by $4,900. And then there's the budget entry.
I'll make that resolution.
Discussion?
Yes.
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 The next one, in April of this year, the board resolved to purchase a 2022 Ford F-350 from Carmody Ford for $56,710. Due to the current price of steel, the cost of the F-350 has been raised to $61,735, which is a difference of $5,025. So resolution is requested to authorize this change in price and to increase the DPW equipment expense account A5132.2 by $5,025 using unrestricted fund balance. And then there's the budget.
That's where the original. Oh, sorry. A motion, discussion, that's where the original money came from.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just increasing the amount. Oh,
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
yes.
All right, and the last one, the Veterans Committee has received a donation in the amount of $300, which has been deposited into the general fund. The committee has requested use of these funds for future brick purchases. Resolution is requested to increase the Veterans Expense Account A7989.4 by $300.
So resolved.
I don't think.
Discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's it.
I know, that's what I think. You don't have to go there.
Okay, code enforcement.
Victoria Landing, the last two C of Os have been issued for the Victoria Landing. So they're completed up there. We're just working on as-built drawings and a number of issues on the site issues that we're trying to clean up. So, but all the units have been sold and all the units have C of Os. That's it.
Okay. Parking, no. Veterans Committee. Auditorium, Sharon?
Okay, thank you. Basically, in the last couple of weeks, I've sorted through all the events that happened in the past, trying to get an overall handle on what has been happening, how it's been happening, and how we can go forward. I went through all of the current requests for 2022 and added holds and events to the calendar. After we get through with understanding of the policies, my next thing is really to create a punch list for everything so that we know exactly where we are, where we're going, and where we stand. So we also had a conversation with Larry Edelman of Opera Saratoga, and it appears very positive that they would like to do a 90-minute opera here in the auditorium. And the interesting thing about it, that hopefully you'll enjoy this, is that one of the things is that it needs an organ. And it is, you know, to use our wonderful landmark as part of it, and such with the prestigious company, is something to really look forward to. We have to get back to them and move forward. They're announcing their season on December 31st from UPH in Saratoga. And, but everything seems very positive now. I've reached out to a number of people in the arts world here and invited them at one time or other to come and to see our facility, because I think that it is very complementary to our history to be able to have lectures and readings and that type of event in there, especially like this year where we're, you know, we don't know where we're going with COVID and other things. So everyone was very excited about it and reviewing the job description, the use documents, the rental policy. And I really do hope to be able to provide a strategic vision and leadership of that vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Ask a question.
Sure.
On that, they're announcing their season on the 31st. I mean, how do we, do you know how much time they need in the auditorium?
I've been asking questions,
Okay.
and so I do have a lot of answers. And they're asking questions back that we're, you know, so we have an ongoing conversation, and it's all been very positive, because I think this would be a really important event for us to really see that if we can make it happen.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I just, you know, we're gonna make a commitment. They, we're gonna tell them, we're making a commitment to them. Are we ready to make that? Do we have, is it okay? Are we gonna be able to fulfill their needs whenever they want to get this performance out?
Well, from what I've read, yes, we should be able to fill their needs. It's one dress rehearsal, one day for the performance, and it's time. There's 2 pianos also involved, and they may have to be delivered and of course acclimated before they can be tuned and or played. So it's a little bit of time, but it's really in the beginning of June. So I think we're okay with that part of it. What we don't have and what we need to discuss is, you know, the rental policy, where we can go, how we take advantage of opportunities like this one, where we can adjust things to make it all work.
Sharon, and I don't know, Lydia probably knows better with the Oregon assuming it's not just anybody can come in and play it. Do they have someone as well that would be familiar with our organ? You know, I wouldn't want them to damage it.
No, I'm sure they would. And the other thing is, I did reach out to Lydia because there is tuning and there's two pianos to tune, and they can't all be done at the same time, of course, so. And I know that we have to provide for tuning, and there was work to be done, but the work could be done maybe another time. So we've just started all of those conversations.
And that was my other question. Does the repairs that you indicated, does that need to be done before this occurs?
I've been corresponding with Matthew Belpaccio at Andover, and he's significantly terrible at responding to emails. So I've sent him like 6 emails in the last month and haven't heard anything back. So if you have a better contact at Andover, the subject line is increasingly urgent. The work he identified, it sounded like the thing that playing it is not dependent on that right now, but I'm just waiting for his message. So I did ask for an updated quote, and I also mentioned the possibility that and the work, I think, can be done for the winter. They would be taking it back to the shop. But I just need to get an answer.
Does he know a phone number? Can we call
I'm
him?
gonna have to listen.
Happy to bid.
I have a cell number.
You have some, I'm not sure. But it, I mean, we have 6 months and I think probably it won't be done.
Yeah, the only question is the order of events. If this is a June 2nd performance, are we doing it before the repair work, before or after, or, you know, because it could sound like we need to tune it before the thing. So would it be better to do the repair work and then tune it? So we only have to tune it once, or, you know. All this.
We usually end up tuning it twice, don't we?
No, we have once. It's $2,000 a pop, so the idea is to do it once if you can.
We have done it twice, like when we had the
Yeah.
celebration in June, and then we had it tuned again at the end of the summer for the regular organ concert.
Yeah.
But we try to cluster the organ concert, so it doesn't need to be done twice, just for now. This would probably be a situation where we
Yeah, because if it's gonna be tuned for June 2nd, and then the organs are until August, I don't know how we're gonna get away with it. So we should build that into the budget as well.
But I think in that instance, I think Wireless paid for one of the tunings, so it's possible that AP3 could pay for one of them. Something, I haven't discussed this with AP3, but that's all possibilities. I just want to mention that calendars are for sale, fundraiser for AP3. There's a few in the office if anyone wants them. Lovely historic photos. Thanks to Amy Leach for putting them together. And one other thing I want to mention, with great trepidation, a group in AP3 is going to try to take a very serious look at parking for auditorium events. Look at the different options for all instances and maybe cost out things like permeable pavers and things of that nature. I'm not sure how the project's going to unwind, but that's something I know the board has wrestled with. So we're hoping to be able to do some light work on it.
Great. Yes.
Would anybody object on the board if we jumped ahead to Griffin's Ridge issues, then come back to the auditorium stuff? Okay. So Griffin's Ridge, curtain drain.
In talking to residents of Griffin's Ridge and Peter Belmonte, they've asked the village engineer to look at the at redesigning the curtain drain, making repairs, or doing whatever they have to do to improve the curtain drain. We've hesitated to have our engineer get involved in the past. I'm asking the village board to allow our engineer to look at it, and Peter Belmonte will pay all costs. That's it.
Is there a reason why we would need to do that?
I think it was initially requested by the residents of Griffin's Ridge, and I think as residents of the village, I think it's important to listen to them and say, yeah, it's something I think, at least from my perspective, that we should be open to.
What other professional has examined that setup other than Peter Belmonte?
I'm gonna guess that it was done by Jason Dell over at Lansing. I don't think he designed it. He's been looking at, I don't know who designed it. I'm assuming that it wasn't designed by an engineer, and that it's now, after it's in, having engineers look at it and say, it's not working.
How did it get in the, we did a PDD to allow that development to be built the way it's built. Was the curtain drain not in the PDD?
No, it was not.
And at what point did the curtain drain get in?
I think
Without us adjusting the PDD if we needed to?
I don't think we needed to, number one. And the curtain drain was put in after they dug a foundation on the western portion of the lot, and it flooded. So Belmonte decided the only way to get the water, it's groundwater, is to move it out of there. And so he ran a curtain drain, which goes through probably, I guess, 10 backyards or 8 backyards. And at that time ran to the stream.
But it was not on village land.
Right.
If Belmonte is paying for this and the residents want a second opinion, why can't they just leave? And I don't disagree with it. If they want another opinion and someone else to look at, especially from an engineering point, and we know Vermont's good, leave the village name right out of it if he's paying for it. So
Yeah, I don't understand why.
what's
we
it
would
matter?
have to authorize it.
Yeah, I mean, why would it even go through the village? Just if he's paying for it, why doesn't he just hire him?
Was he paying for the engineer, or is he just paying for the work to fix it?
I think did you say an engineer to look
He's
at it?
paying for both. Why he's doing that, because Lamont is a village engineer. Belmonte currently has an escrow account with us for all engineering costs involved in Griffin's Ridge. And so he wants to run it through that way.
So and I should ask one of the Griffith, John, I don't know if you're the spokesman or whoever it is.
I can be.
Griffin's Ridge, the residents didn't do their own study through an engineer.
No,
Okay.
not the organization that Mr. Kringsmore and I are representing, and did with Mr. Sheridan. But basically what we'd like to do is get a proper permit filed by Belmonte to do the work based on engineering drawings and hydrologist reports. Have the village engineer review it and make sure that it goes in right. You've got us under a homeowners association that the village has been part and parcel of, responsible for that drain, and it doesn't work. And we're talking about substantial amounts of money that nobody in that development expected to be responsible for. So basically what we'd like to do is have it done right. Now recently we got a building permit for repair, I think for Mr. Sheridan. I don't see any building permit for the original operation of that drain. And I don't know if Mr. Peterson wants to address that, but we were told that it was on personal property that didn't need to go through a building permit process. But that's not the case. I mean, and obviously an issuance of a building permit for the repair is some evidence that that is not the case. We'd like to have it done right. We'd like it to operate right. And then at the end of the whole thing, if it's part of the infrastructure, and have the village take it over and be responsible for it. It's as simple as that.
So if you don't mind and your group doesn't mind, the village engineer jumping into this.
We asked them to be involved. It was our request. We didn't know that Belmonte had an escrow account to pay for it. And we did ask Mr. Sheridan to make sure that there was no undue influence or bias as a result of the engineer for the village being paid by Belmonte. We have all the faith in the world with the responsibility of the professionals that will do the job. Mr. Belmonte seems to want to do it. Hopefully the village engineer will get involved and do it and resolve the problem, as opposed to, you know, who's going to pay for it? We don't want anything to do with it. Let's wash our hands of it. Let's get rid of it. That's all we want. We want it done and done right.
Can't blame you for that.
Okay, this isn't really an open session.
Oh, no, okay, but somebody had to stand up. I didn't think so.
No, it's good.
Okay.
Any questions can be directed to me or to Peter, and I promise I'll get back to you with the best answer we can.
So do we need to take?
I don't think we need to take action on that.
I think we're being given, I think we're being given an opportunity to say, please don't. So, no, they don't need a permission, but I think it's this is a
We have no objection.
light gesture to let the village know that this is the plan. They give us an opportunity to say, no, we don't want to do that, if that's the case.
Okay.
So
Little Kendall
kind of like
right there.
a little negative.
So we don't need to do anything. We're okay with it, right?
Do we just need to
Correct.
say we have no objection?
We have no
We have no
objection
objection.
to it.
Well, I know this is not open session, Mr. Mayor. Let me just ask.
He asked you, so you can respond. Board member asked you the question, so you can respond.
Oh, well, the whole process, I believe, is going to be done on an application for a building. None was ever done. Under normal circumstances, wouldn't the village engineer review the building permit, drawings, the plans, what's going to be done, how it's going to be effective? Isn't that a common situation with the engineer? That's why you have an escrow account, isn't it? To pay for engineering costs. And when they built those houses, and put in the storm drains and whatnot, I assume your engineer reviewed them all and approved them. That's what we want. We just want it to be done correctly.
We have our assurance that we will let it move ahead.
All right, the next issue. Peck Avenue Path.
Okay, the planning board also met and reviewed the pathways in, that lead out of Griffin's Ridge. The most southern pathway is supposedly handicapped accessible and goes from the southern loop up into the Zim Smith Trail. We look at it and say it's a hazard. It doesn't work. It's going to be a nightmare, maintenance nightmare with that trail. We'd like to eliminate, the planning board would like to eliminate that trail. It's now parkland, so I guess we would just let trees grow there, you know, just, you know, we don't want people coming to do something right at the edge of the Zim Smith Trail, so people are not coming down there. We don't want to see it used. And then on the Peck Avenue Trail, they looked at that and said, well, the problem there is there are major rocks at the end of the trail, and it forces anybody coming through Peck Avenue to go through somebody's backyard there. It's not delineated at all. The planning board said somebody should move the rocks and put down pavers. I brought that to the mayor, and the mayor said pavers would be so expensive that it's, you know, it doesn't seem sensible to do that.
Which is my standard answer to pretty much everything.
So the planning board is just referring that to the village board. You decide.
Well, I mean, the Peck Avenue path was always just kind of like an informal cut through to what became Griffin's Ridge. And you could just go beyond further over to Pearl High or Cape Town.
Basically just went into the woods.
Woods, yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
And it went and stopped.
And that was the end of that.
The delineation.
Yeah, so there's no delineation, there's a fence, anybody going down there walks in backyards. They don't know
Why
where
are
it is.
people going through there at all?
There are people going through there.
But why couldn't you just stop it and then let people walk to the bike trail?
Well, that was my vote on the planning board, but the planning board outvoted me and said, no, we should have that, and it should be delineated. But I said, it's up to the village board, we're just making a recommendation.
Well, years ago in the planning, the idea was to connect Griffin's Ridge with the village as much as possible. So, and that was an existing trail. I know Tom's used it, I use it to walk our dogs all the time. But it's, once you get past the ravine, it's a little awkward, so that we
Very awkward.
straighten that out, and Tina had some nice photos that she shared with us.
Yeah, in retrospect, I mean, we may have overdone the access to Griffin's Ridge, the various public access, because we have the Y part that splits off, right?
Yeah.
When you come in and then it splits off to either loop. And then you have the backyard thing that goes through a couple backyards, straight through it, you walk straight through there. And then you had the disaster down the other end,
Cleveland,
with the railing. That we should take the railing out, put a trail, this thing closed, and let nature take its course.
that's what Peter suggested.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe we've overdone it. Maybe we only need the entryway where it winds off.
Is that to the Zim Smith Trail?
Yeah, you go from the Zipsmith Trail, you go in, it's a one straight
Oh,
path, and then it winds off.
Okay, so there's one up there.
Yeah, it's very wide, it's very,
That's right.
very nice.
Yeah, so how many do we need?
Well, that's my point. How many?
I mean, the part of Peck Avenue, and if you look at the pictures, you can see it's very, and somebody's been cutting the branches, so it's very nicely groomed, if you will, all the way up until you get to almost the ravine, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
But when you get further, it's all overgrown. I mean, me and Lucy were walking and stepping over and it was down.
It's like when you get here, it kind of falls.
Yeah, it's almost like if we're not gonna maintain it all the way through, then just put posts and end it right there.
Well, we've been talking about maintaining it, but we're waiting for those rocks to get.
Why can't we move the rocks? I mean, how difficult is it to move those rocks? We've been talking about it for well over a year.
We could move them. It actually slipped off my radar. I just.
If you could move them to the side and delineate one end of the
If I can get a
trail.
piece of equipment in there to move them,
Just wait till the ground freezes.
yeah, I mean, at this point, I
Nice.
don't know if I can. And I mean, that kind of, now if I remember, that's kind of been a problem all year.
Yeah, it's been wet.
It's been
It's
wet.
wet. We
So
attempted,
they can't be moved.
Oh, they can, but you have to wait till the ground freezes.
you gotta, yeah, I mean, it's been an abnormally wet year.
Okay,
You
so we're
didn't-
waiting for the ground to freeze.
At this point, yeah.
Then we're gonna move the rocks. And if you move them to the side, the reason I don't walk on that trail is because I'm not sure where the beginning is. If you move the rocks to the side, we'll know. And last we spoke, I thought that your preferred resolution was to have a split rail fence, which would be much less expensive than pavers. And that would delineate the trail, and it would also protect the neighbors from having people wander by mistake onto their lawn.
That was not the planning board's resolution, it was Peter Belmonte.
No, it was you and me talking.
Yeah, it was Belmonte also.
Did he object you to that? Is there a reason not to do that?
Well, no, there's no, it's a 12-foot wide path.
It looks like they put up, the one neighbor's put up stakes and the other guy put in an evergreen.
Well, people are walking all over, and,
Right.
this is what I hear. People are coming through backyards, they're coming through at night, they're coming,
Well, there's not a lot of space between those two houses.
No. I walked through it a number of times, but it kind of sunk up to my calves, way back. But I feel like I'm intruding on walking through those, there, because the houses are right there, the two houses are right there. And in retrospect, maybe it was overkill. We didn't need to do it.
I think so.
It's gonna be the same with the wide path, though, once the houses are built, it's gonna be exactly the same.
Why reach west? Peck Avenue reach north. They don't serve the same function.
And the houses are already there by the Y, everything's built.
Yeah,
I just walked through, there's no more openings. by the
oh,
Y.
yeah.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, but
Find another one? Yeah.
we can't give it all.
Well, the wide is there.
Yeah.
My path is wide, it's there. We can learn our lessons from this, but it sounds like this is like,
And I don't-
Maybe a good start would be to move the rocks and then
Yeah,
take it from there.
reassess.
Johnny, are you gonna be able to get around this tree?
Well, it's gonna be. I'm not gonna be able to go through their yard. We're gonna have to clear the path and go that way. I'm not driving my tractor through that.
No, you got to come in.
No, you're not. Yeah, would be only if you did that. I mean,
it just seems kind of.
Nice speak.
That's all
Oh,
public comment.
gotcha.
So move the rocks if possible, see where we go from there.
Put up a fence, something in the future.
Why move the rocks if we're not gonna make a path? Either make the path and move the rocks or don't move the rocks. You could put the rocks more in the way, but if you move the rocks out and you're working on a path, then we should continue making the path. And do split rail fence, or, I mean, I don't know if we should move the rocks and then think about it.
Well, I think people are using it. People are going through the woods right now and ending up in people's backyards.
Well, then let's stop it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And not by eliminating a public path that's part of the PDD and was
right.
very strongly supported as a way to connect the two different portions of our village.
Okay, so that was the point, is we need to have as much access as possible. And so we should clear the rocks and put up a split rail walkway to keep people off the other people's property, keep walkers off the property. Right?
Yes.
Is that what you're suggesting?
What I would suggest. Yeah.
Are we making a decision?
We're not going to be able to do anything for a
No.
while. We're not gonna put a fence in,
Can't
we're
get
not gonna move the rocks now, so.
Well, once the ground freezes, going to move the rocks, at least get that far.
yeah, I mean, we might have to cut a path through there. I mean, I haven't walked
Right, I
that much.
know.
I'm not in there often. I mean, honestly, I just don't, I feel like I'm intruding on somebody's house if I walk in there. I don't like it. And that's just my personal opinion.
Where, right before you get to the houses, there's the ravine,
Mhm.
and there's drainage down
Yeah.
there with taking that equipment through there, harm that drainage in any way, that drain.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure you'd be able to.
Have to look at it or do whatever we have to do. All I know is coming through his yard is not a good idea.
No. Yeah.
No, I just wouldn't want you to try to start taking a piece of equipment back there and.
Oh, we
there-
look
there
at
is-
it first to make sure we can get something through there or make it so we can. I mean, if that's what you want, that's what I mean.
Yeah, why don't
You
we
have to do
all
what you gotta
take a
do.
look at it in person
Okay.
and then revisit it.
Once again, I don't go in there often, and when I do go in there, actually, I send the guys like, oh, they want wood chips, and I send the guys, I personally don't go in there very often, it's a path.
But we could close the southernmost one off,
Yes.
but I think we should just do that.
Yeah, that's the one that was
That
talked about
danger.
earlier, I don't, it's on a hill, it's a very bad
It's terrible.
location.
I don't know where the rumor started, it was a handicap thing, so it's like this.
But it's loose gravel and
Yeah, I don't know why they said that. They put the rail up because it is such, it's treacherous.
Yeah.
So our intention is to do something with this.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to 5 Albany. Is it 5 Albany Ave? Yeah, 5 Albany Ave, the survey review, Peter?
Yeah, the survey that we got, or just got, is wrong. It doesn't show that the board on October 1st voted I think it's 2 foot from the walk, from the steps leading to the porch. Would be the boundary marker. The survey has about 8 feet. Here, if this is what the board voted on October 1st, this is the survey. The survey the board is saying it should be, I put a pencil line in here. The board said this is the marker. That, there's no change. This is what, it's showing that, what the previous owner used eminent domain to take from the village. The board voted on that. I think what happened is this survey was put together 3 days before the village voted on. If you look at the date of the survey.
Yeah, it's October 14.
Well, it was put together on September 28th. Printed on the 14th, but it was,
Field survey completed September 29th. Yes.
yeah.
Well, you can't evaluate it based on this because they don't. There's 10.2 feet and 10.0 feet.
Anyway, it's not correct.
Okay, well, let me compare it to that.
And table this discussion.
The Board of Trustees agrees that the adversely possessed land, plus an additional 2 feet from the edge of the porch,
That way giving them the front steps.
so they're giving us 10 feet from this.
Yeah.
So shouldn't the 10 feet be from here?
No, we're saying that, I read that to say that we're giving them 2 feet from the porch. So it
Should be 2 feet,
from here. I measured from here.
but this is the porch,
Yeah,
and this is the farthest out. This corner is the farthest out that the porch goes. So if you move 2 feet this direction, should be from this point.
yeah. So,
Okay.
so that's, you just have to correct the survey.
Survey needs to be corrected.
I'm gonna steal this.
Yeah.
I'll give it back.
Okay. Moving up to auditorium manager position. How would the board like to proceed with discussion on this?
Is that the job, this document here, the 2022 auditorium director job description?
Well, I thought it would be better to decide on the use policy before we director job description because the use policy talks about different things that the auditorium director is in charge of, so I
All right.
think that would be more.
Then let's go with the Round Lake Auditorium use policy. I gave my comments a couple weeks ago, and I haven't seen anything in the intervening weeks.
Just to clarify, this is the November 29 draft.
It's
Oh, yeah, yes.
in here.
Yep. It says rental policy on the top, but it's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Underneath and bold. It says
Yeah, it
audit
says,
use
right,
policy.
but it isn't the rental policy, it says that on all the tops of it, it's the use policy. Yeah. So a lot of this, just to let you know what Matt mentioned, a lot of this is about, a lot of this is taken from the rental policy, but applied in more general terms. This assumes that we would keep a rental use policy because there are parts that are specifically about rentals. This is about the use of the auditorium in general. It starts off with a paragraph saying where it's been, from the history of it, because this is not only for us, it's for, a document we could give anyone who's interested in the auditorium. So it's a very brief overview of the auditorium in the first two paragraphs. Says what we do there, notes that it's in the middle of the village, a unique location at the center of the village is taken into consideration with all arrangements and use agreements. And then it talks about what did you say, Kim, was the correct number of seats right now? 302. 302. Talks about a brief overview of the facility, the different kinds of events. This was different in this policy than we have seen before, that there are created three types of auditorium events. We have village events that are basically geared to, there's a description later. Village events are geared primarily to residents. The second category of event is the program events, which is referring to the seasonal events that we've had in the past. This is someone creating a program for the summer, and these are things often that we pay for or are done for free, or there's a grant and we have a children's program or whatever. Those are program events. And then the third category being rental events, where people are strictly, in some fashion, renting it to do something there. That would include weddings or performances or whatever that they are paying us to do. So those are discussed later in the use policy in greater detail. But all these event categories, the event management, here it says all auditorium events are overseen by the director. How we have access to it, that you need an event contact person, what we do with the calendar, capacity, the hours that you could use the auditorium in. We have reduced this now to 9:30 instead of 10 to allow people to be noisy till 10. Sharon has made the point that might inhibit some people from using auditorium at 10. It's kind of a normal cutoff time. So I kind of agree with that and think maybe we ought to go back to that. People know that after 10 they have to abide by the noise agreements. That's to get quieter. Music and noise levels, things that you can't harm the decorations is like you can't harm the auditorium, you can't stick nails in the walls, that you have to clean it up and leave it room swept, that you can't smoke inside the auditorium, that there isn't a lot of parking, and events expecting over 50 vehicles must submit a parking plan. So it's pushing that because that's been an issue. And that the board can waive or modify all these policies. The third page is where it broke down those three event categories because they did seem to have some different things about them. And I wrote a description of what is a village event. To be considered a village event, it must be organized by a Round Lake resident or civic group. It must be open to all village residents. and the financial proceeds must benefit the village or a village organization unless otherwise approved by the board. Private social events like weddings or birthdays are considered rental events, and then they apply to the rental costs. They have fees. The requests for village events are made through the village event manager and approved by the auditorium director and or the village board. So what a village event manager was putting in, what we talked about one time, as maybe there's an auditorium director and then someone who does the community events, the local events, that works in conjunction with the director, but the director is the one that's keeping the calendar so that there wasn't confusion with the calendar. So that, for, you know, lack of anything better, we're calling the person in charge of the auditorium director, and then the village event manager. We can change those titles.
So the auditorium director would be handling all decisions. However, in the one case of the village events, we'd have a second person.
That was the idea.
That the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the program and the rental events, that's strictly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if we don't want to do it, but that was trying to incorporate the idea of what do we do about village events? Would it be better if there was somebody, you know, rather than trying to have two managers and that gets confusing, that we have an auditorium director and a village event manager if we wanted to do that. And it also notes that the village events are covered under the village's liability policy and do not require additional insurance. So it's clear how that is happening. So open mic night would be a village event. It might be overseen by the community event manager. We are not worried about liability insurance because we assume that that is covered under the village's policy. There's also saying that the village event manager or another person that's designated by the village office must be available during the setup and loadout as well as the event. So there is somebody there that we know who it is who's in charge of a village event. Would
they have to, for a village event, for a program event or a rental event, you have to sign a contract?
We'll talk about that. So that's just a description of the village event. I'm just talking about the event all into then program events. Says that the village develops a program of warm weather events for the auditorium each year, and that this is developed and managed by the director. Each program event has its own financial agreement. Some events may be paid for through the auditorium budget. Others may pay the village because they want to perform there, and still others may split ticket proceeds with the village because they've all been different. We've had all of those things. A financial contract will be executed and signed by the auditorium director and the event's contact person. So we have to have a contract of some sort that explains what's going on with the finances, who's in charge, etc. Requests for these program events are made through and approved by the auditorium director, and that the auditorium director seeks the village board's guidance for any unique events or questions. So the auditorium director has to, hey, we're not sure about the Witch's Walk. What do you think about that if it's different? But it wouldn't necessarily say we're doing an organ concert and I have to run that by the board because we haven't in the past. If we want to do that differently, you know, we could do that, but that's how it's been, that's how we've done it in the past. Program events are also covered under the village's liability policy and do not require additional insurance. So it's two categories. The village events and the program events, the regular summer season, are under our liability insurance. Then there's the rental events. This is an abbreviated overview of rental events. There is still a rental policy because there's so much going on and they are unique to each situation, whether it's a wedding or a band is coming in or whatever, or the opera, they would all have their own rental use agreement. But this says that the auditorium may be rented for public or private events, and the rental periods are either half day or full day. And fees, insurance, and additional details are found in the auditorium rental policy. So, but it also says that the rental events are made through, requests are made through the auditorium director and approved by the village board. that a rental contract will be executed and signed by the auditorium director and the rental event contact person. If we wanted to have, say, the auditorium director or the mayor or village clerk, we could do that. But I'm just making sure that we understand that the auditorium director is actively involved in this. So it's not Kim making the contracts because she shouldn't have to do that. It says the auditorium director or another person designated by the village office will be available during the entire event, including setup and loadout periods, as with the other ones. There's always somebody there that is designated to be in charge. Village-owned tables and movable chairs are used by renters at the discretion of the village office, because that has been an issue in the past. Sometimes people care, and I don't know where we are with that.
Let me stop you there. We need to define what the village office means.
Sure, sure.
You say
Say
clerk.
village clerk, or mayor and village clerk, or, you know.
Yeah.
Sure,
As long as we're specific.
all right, so village office, just for now, village office, to say equals,
What is it?
mayor or village clerk.
I lost track. What is this referring to?
When the phrase, the village office
Right.
used.
But we're under rental events or program events.
So that's the last bullet.
Yeah, the last thing on the third page.
It's used throughout.
On which one?
It is used throughout, so Tom is asking for clarification. Where am I in my explanation on the very last couple sentences
Of rental events.
of the
Yeah.
entire document? Yes. Only one full day or rental event may be scheduled per day. We're just saying, let's just do one rental a day. No conflicts and dates may be booked up to 1 year in advance. So there's still a rental policy
Yeah.
that talks about all those things that it always has. You specify who's paying who what, specify the $1 million liability policy necessary, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then everybody signs it. But this is an overview of a suggested overview, draft overview of how we would use the auditorium in its entirety.
Going back to the rental events, first and last bullet, the auditorium director or another person designated by the village office will be available during the entire event. Would that be?
I don't know, it said the auditorium director or someone who is the village, guys. It could be whoever we want it to. This is leaving it open. If you want to
Right, but
finalize it.
someone would presumably have to be paid, so.
No, not necessarily. There are people who have been, we have never paid anybody, it's other than the manager, so, and maybe we would or we wouldn't, but the other person designated by the village office, what Tom was saying is, who's the village office? So he was suggesting we say, designated by the mayor or village clerk. But then, yeah, we can talk about who that would be, who would do those things. Just saying, if we're gonna have events, then we ought to have somebody there that knows.
I'm not disputing it, I just, the logistics of it are,
So
I had to say, Peter, you gotta be there for, I'm designating you to be there for 5 hours.
No, I would,
Oakland County?
I would assume that it would be somebody connected with the event, you know, I mean, we've kind of muddled through that before, you know, the auditorium manager and.
Okay, somebody connected with the
Scott read
event.
me a
Okay.
lot, Scott was very available for, you know, event oversight, so. If we, yeah, I mean, that's, I'm just saying, you pick who it is, but somebody has to be, somebody has to be chosen so that we know who's got the keys and is locking and unlocking, and if it's a mess, who do you talk to? You know, if there's a problem during the event, who do you talk to? That's all.
Okay.
I mean, there's two scenarios. There's if Sharon's the director and she knows she's gonna be on vacation during these two events, I'm sure there's plenty of time to figure out, you know, who she would want to be able to do that, whether it's asking one of us or somebody, you know, that is trusted. I don't know who those people are. The other one is if she suddenly falls ill on the day of the event and can't do it, then we need to almost have a backup designated.
Well, we definitely have to figure out who's in charge of opening and closing and oversight and, you know, and if it's, you know, there's a total of 5 events, including, you know, we have a small summer program and 1 open mic night and a, you know, an open mic night and 2 organ concerts and 1, you know, 1 other and 1 rental. Well, that might not be an issue, but if it's something we're doing frequently, that's gonna be more of an issue.
Can I ask a question, the village event section? So that's like the kind of more informal, loosey-goosey kind of, people should use it, and we're not gonna charge a fee, and yet the auditorium director somehow is gonna oversee this too.
Or, well, the idea was that there was a village event manager that was
Okay,
more
okay.
involved.
But one of the things that I thought we ought to do is, with the program events and the rental events, we have a record of that. Shouldn't we have a record of the village events for posterity and at least responsibility?
But they'll be in the calendar, for one thing.
Okay. Okay, so
You
that,
can
so we,
attach a name to it, you can put information in the calendar, so that they have a record.
oh yeah, because I was just wondering, I mean, we want to know that at the end of a year or 2 or 3 or 4, that this is being used and this is what it's being used for. And maybe there's certain people who use it more than others, and we just want to know who we got out there. But as long as they're doing, it says on the calendar, and you'll have a person who's assigned responsibility or so, or is heading up that particular event. We have some reference to it.
Yeah, so maybe we could have something really brief. This event on this day, and this is the person in charge.
Something like that, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have to be a contract, it would just have to be some kind of acknowledgement that we know what was happening on this day.
You
And
can also say what money came from donations and.
Right, proceeds, or the money went to
right,
this group or whatever, you know.
So maybe we expand on the ledger and just say, you know, for this open mic night, so-and-so managed it and locked up whatever, and then used for the donation.
yeah,
And
so we
So
know,
you can see that that was a successful event, we should continue that, you know.
yeah, that's all.
So, yeah, so if we could say something of, you know, a village event. You know, village event use form is.
Oh, it's also good for the historic purposes.
Oh, yeah.
Because
No, I'm just saying, if you want to put it in there, we could say that a village event use form will be completed.
Used by village residents. I think it's a good idea.
5 years from now, we'll go, well, who ran that? It went so well.
Heidi?
Yeah.
Do we want to put in the use policy regarding village events that not only are they open to the public, but there'll be some sort of public notice, so that, you know, it's posted on the board or. for the-
Well,
for the
advertising in
3 of
general,
us in the entire village who don't use Facebook.
yeah,
You know, if there's
yes,
some way
and
to
we
know.
want to use those kiosks more, I mean.
That's what I had.
Yes. So advertising in general is not specified anywhere in this, you know, how we do that, but I think that is an issue. We've talked about that before, and I think that that was part of the kiosk thing, and some of those village events were going on the calendar, but you had to go to look to the, you know, the auditorium webpage, you know, website, you had to go to that to see it. It didn't. We weren't using the kiosks and we weren't using the word in here. So yes, I think we should.
Was the board happy with this?
pretty complete. I mean, I'm not, I don't have as much experience, but I'd ask Lydia and I'd ask Sharon what they think of the people who have tons of years of experience.
I'm fine with the overall concept, but I have a lot of technical tweaks that I would make, like the village office thing and some information to be clarified or corrected. So if you wouldn't mind me having a crack at it, I wouldn't mind doing some comments. Substantively, so
Revisit it.
In January.
First meeting in January, 2 weeks enough,
Sure.
2.5 weeks.
And I would like to see, especially under the rental events, that there has to be, or at the discretion of the auditorium director and the village, or there has to be some flexibility in there to make decisions around certain events. So I would like to see that.
Well, then,
Oh, but just in
Well,
things that are happening.
well, where there is in the overview at the beginning, at the bottom of page 2, it says policy changes. It says the village board may waive or modify any or all of the things on a case-by-case basis. I don't know if we want to add more
Village
flexibility.
board, I mean, suppose somebody wants to load in, take a break, come back, do a rehearsal that takes a little more than 5 hours. You're gonna bring that to the village board?
No,
I think
Well, that would be, I think would be under the rental policy.
yeah, the
So
rental
we can
policy.
adapt the rental policy.
And we're not having more than one rental a day, so you either have the half day or the full day. So well, there's only one full day rental, so if you're,
But you're confined to 5 hours.
no,
5 hours.
no, 5 hours or more.
But this also doesn't cover that situation. That's a separate document. We're just
Okay.
discussing. the
They get a
use
much more
policy.
detailed rental policy where you talk about, we've done this, like, let's example, Carpe Diem. There were audition days, there were rehearsal days, there was, a this and a that, and then they did yet another performance. All those days were spelled out in the contract, and then, that's not.
One would expect, since these are planned well in advance, you have an opportunity to clear any of that.
Okay,
It's not saying you have to only be in this hour or that hour. It's like, if you rent it for a full day, you have it for the full day. You can do whatever you want between 8:30 and 10 or
whatever it is, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so, I mean, it's very, I think, confusing having two documents that basically say the same thing but conflict with each other. It's,
Well, they don't conflict with each other. What the rental policy, that little overview of the rental policy in the use policy says, go see the rental policy for more detail. The use policy says there's village events, there's program events, and there's rental events. And for the rental events, go look at the rental use policy because that is much more detail. The rental use policy has a lot, liability insurance and smoking and noise and parking. You have to have a parking plan. You have to figure out what the money is. Are we splitting tickets? All of that.
I get it, but, okay. Seems like a lot for a little.
I think the main purpose of this is that they didn't have any policy to cover, formally discuss things like village events.
And that kind of thing, okay.
And it's just to put them all in context.
And that
the
became a
universe of
problem.
uses, I think.
Yeah.
This won't be necessarily anything to show,
To anybody,
yeah, it'll just be
okay.
the policy that the board and you or whoever. in your position.
It's not a public policy,
Well,
it is
Publicly available, but it's not
Right.
something you can't.
to somebody, okay. Thank you.
At least that's how I see
Well,
it.
that's how I see it.
It's to help make sure that we, as much as we can, are consistent, realizing each event could be different and is subject to
Yes.
tweaks, but to give us some guidelines and try to, again. as
So
much as
it's an
possible.
internal document mostly. Not available.
We had a rental policy, but we didn't have a use policy. And nobody was clear about what was a program event, which was a village event,
Which is a rental event.
so we said,
So it defines
it's,
that
it's,
part of it.
yes.
Okay.
Could I ask one more question? And this relates to, because I don't quite understand it, what Bob Kincaid mentioned at the beginning. What is he referring to?
What I think you're referring to is, so what are these what are these events that we're paying people for? Shouldn't they be paying
Correct,
us?
I mean, I don't see why we're paying band
Because,
Well, some of these events, because it's a village event per se, there might only be 25 people that show up. No band's gonna come here and perform for 25 people and pay us. So this is sort of a village benefit. It's something that, you know, we're giving back to the community as part of our budget to provide programs for the village to
But
participate
is
in.
it really for the village, getting outside band? Who in the village cares about that band?
well, the same thing about that we had in programs, so it's seasonal program. We've had bands, some, not that many, but we've had bands, we've had organ concerts, we've had puppet shows, other children events.
Well, yeah, I understand puppet shows, you know, children's dance, I have no problem with that. I'm just not seeing where it's really in the village interest to be bringing in outside bands. You know, I don't, like some of these bands are frankly obnoxious. One, I live across the street from the auditorium and the thing was so loud, when we shut all our doors, you know, still could hardly hear the TV. It was absolutely ridiculous. As far as I'm concerned, if we're paying them, we're really not doing a very good job of monitoring food. You know, a puppet show, I think that's great, a children's puppet show, I think that's wonderful. But a regular band, you know, if they can't support themselves as far as, you know, have enough people who want to come, then why are they subsidizing?
Okay,
Well,
Bob, I think
okay,
we're getting a little off track here.
I think so,
and-
but
And Sharon is going to be looking at all these issues
Okay.
and analyzing all this, the pros and cons of these events. So we'll certainly take your comments into consideration. I'm off track. Where was I? Okay, so we are going to defer this till first week of January, the agenda, and moving on to the job description. And I emailed you the thoughts that Sharon had, and Lydia emailed you some thoughts on this. Wish to take time to absorb them and consider it, or do you want to hash it out now?
I don't know if we have to hash it out, but Sharon made some handwritten comments on a page that I saw online, but I don't see
That
here.
was for the rental policy, I think.
Oh, okay, okay.
Right, we have some thoughts that- But also we need to decide whether or not we want to have when we're talking about the job description. What happens with marketing? What happens with, what else I'm trying to find. Well, marketing, yeah, we can talk about that for now. There was something else that I wanted to. Oh, what about the, do we want to have a village events manager or not? Just a thought. I mean,
Well, I think we will be doomed to failure without one. My opinion.
I mean, if somebody, Scott or Eric or anybody wants to have an event, they've got to be able to come to somebody. I don't know why you wouldn't do the auditorium manager, but I'm saying you shouldn't have a local liaison type.
So we can just be managing that more, what we're doing in the village and confer with the auditorium director who will be keeping the calendar, make sure those dates are clear and, you know, I don't know who, I mean, it's just.
So everybody in the community would know that Scott Raveney
Right,
was the guy to go to
right,
if you were thinking of doing something.
right,
And Scott would then take it to Sharon.
yeah. I mean, that was what I was thinking.
I mean,
That's another job description. to
Exactly.
come up with.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be under the one I sent out earlier, the local, I think I called it the local manager thing.
Manager liaison.
So, I mean, that is some of the things that, that's a start. I could work on that and distribute that if you want.
I mean, I don't know if this is what we're gonna hash out with the job description. People see something. I had a problem with the first draft. It's not, they're not gonna die on it. But the auditorium director will oversee operations of the auditorium, subject to direction from the mayor in consultation with the village board of trustees. I thought the operations of the auditorium was the responsibility of the village board of trustees that includes the mayor.
Yeah, the way it was phrased before was, was the oversight was by the village board.
It makes it seem like the auditorium director is taking direction from the mayor. And then the village board will be consulted. And I just, something about the wording there.
Now, we discussed this last time when I got all agitated and shook a piece of paper at you and said, the village mayor is all powerful. And I didn't argue at the time because I wasn't sure that I was right. I said, "You know, maybe this person is considered a vendor." So I didn't say anything. But the next morning, I emailed New York Conference of Mayor General Counsel, and they said, that doesn't change anything. The contract employee is still subject to the mayor. I have it written if you want to read it.
Well, the
subject to-
contract that we had before.
But I mean, I don't care what the wording is. You can.
Okay,
word
but
it
I'm just
any way
saying,
you
the
want.
auditorium manager, past contracts of the auditorium manager will oversee operations of the auditorium, subject to direction from the village board.
That's fine.
So.
As I said, I don't care about the wording.
Okay.
You can change it.
All
That's
right,
fine.
so I think that's what Tom was
Yeah,
referring to.
it just kind of looks awkward. It almost seems like the village is the mayor is directing the auditorium director, then will be consulted on that. Direction is.
I'm not anticipating that Sharon's going to need much direction.
No, I don't either. But, we get a monthly, I think it's very important, we get a monthly, we hear from you in some way, shape or form. Okay. You know, I don't have a problem with written report, because I know you like to go off to Canary Islands and places like that, so, you know, so if you need to do that at any given time, you know, that's fine. I just like to be able to know what's going on. You know, I don't have to hear it through third and fourth parties. Things that happen. So, I didn't hear about that. I'm on the village board. But it's kind of.
For that access point person for all external inquiries, do we want to just say inquiries? I mean, I think it used to say external. I think you're taking that off of what we used in the past, but if we're. I'm just saying, want to just say inquiries?
Sure.
And we don't have to wonder what's external, internal. Want to say designated and oversee volunteer coordinators for individual events. I don't know. I think we can phrase that better. I know that that's from the old stuff too. Also, as a liaison with lighting and sound technicians, I gave Dan a title in the use policy calling the AV director. That you have to confer. It says in here, the auditorium AV director must be directly consulted during the initial stages of booking any event. Use of the auditorium audiovisual equipment is subject to the approval of the AV director, and fees will be charged if additional audiovisual equipment or personnel are required. Trying to get Dan into what he needs. He wants to hear about it up front and he wants people to help him as needed. So we could say, when it says liaison with lighting and sound technicians, we could say liaison with the, if we're gonna give Dan that title, liaison with the AV director.
And that applies to all of it.
Yes. So other than that, those couple of things, the only thing I wonder about is designate and oversee volunteer coordinators for individual events as needed. That was us trying to stuff something in before that each event was going to have a coordinator for that event, and they were going to do the work, and then they were going to report back to the auditorium manager at the time. So we don't really have volunteer coordinators. We just say designate. We just oversee coordinators for events as needed or something like that. They're not designating. Auditorium director is not designating a volunteer coordinator. They're overseeing whoever is managing whoever's the boots on the ground is the point. Oversee coordinators for individual events as needed. You know what I mean?
Well, is that mainly in the village events or for?
This wording is taken from past years, okay? So we have a different idea.
Well, I mean, determine if the event will require volunteers. If they do, who's going to get the volunteers? Is that the auditorium director, or are they appointing somebody to go?
Well, they can do whatever they want, but they have to make sure that they. So this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd like to, put some of these two
I
together.
reorganized a little bit, but my primary, my primary concern was that the document that's posted combines agreement and job description. And I think they should be separate. So I did the job description and circulated that.
Okay.
And then I think a employment services agreement could reference the job description.
I like the way it's laid out about the scheduling of the events, the marketing, the facility itself.
I just hadn't had time to digest it from the points you sent today, like one thing or anything else, so.
I tried to capture all the points.
Do you want to rework it and maybe we revisit this?
Or at least have time to digest it, like I said, I just got it, I don't know when you sent it, I just looked at it this
Just
morning.
this morning.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't look at the posted documents.
And yeah, there's a couple things I didn't see, and I don't know. If the auditorium director is, did I miss it? Who's cleaning the place?
Who's what?
Cleaning,
Right, well, that would be,
that's not gonna be Sharon.
That's a separate.
that would be,
Nor should it be the mayor,
Or the mayor,
right?
it shouldn't be the mayor.
We shouldn't have to do it.
So maybe we can have time to look at this and come back with the next meeting.
Sure. Sherry, did you have any?
then do you wanna do a really short one for the village event?
Do a what? I'm sorry?
A short job description for the village event manager
Yes.
as well.
Is this you doing all this? Are you doing all this?
I'm happy to do it if you want me to.
Fine on it, so.
Yeah, I wrote the auditorium director is not responsible for cleaning or stocking basic supplies in the auditorium, but assure that the auditorium is ready for an event. And by that, I meant let the village know if things need to be stocked.
Or it could be them and building too. Either way.
Yeah, I don't think we.
But I would expect that the contractor rental would address all the trash removal and that stuff. I don't, not cleaning, but
But I mean, I think in a local event, and I don't get bogged down in this. I think in a local event, most of our people here in the village would probably pitch in and take a quick 10 minutes.
they already
15 minutes,
do.
Make sure stuff is put back where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I just don't want
I,
to share and clean now.
that's my point. I don't want Sharon or the mayor or somebody else. Clean that.
So the description and the punch list of events, I'm well combined with this. That's,
It's not a punch list for events.
oh, it certainly looks like.
No, it's trying to define what you do and do not have to be responsible for.
Well, okay, but right now this is more than a full-time job. So,
I didn't say it was you, I said it was the auditorium director.
okay, yeah, I mean,
Now,
you have to be careful a little bit here.
But we have to give everything, shouldn't be there.
Well, like determining events will require volunteers. To me, that's a punch list. Will require a parking plan. Well, okay, that's a punch list.
Well, you don't have to make the record thing, you
No,
just have to make sure
right.
that somebody. that-
Right, and I think that says this.
it says that there's more than 50 people expected to attend, that whoever's running the event is supposed to have a parking plan. Now, if that was a program event for the summer, then somebody's gonna have to figure out a parking plan in the village, you or somebody else.
I'm not doing parking, I'm just saying, because if I'm going to be an auditorium director, I need to be at the auditorium, I can be worrying.
No, it's talking about a plan, not you standing out there with a sign.
Yeah, but things go wrong and it always goes back
Well,
to
we
the
have to
person.
find, we just have to figure out who does it, because that's one thing that's come up every single time. What about auditorium parking? What about auditorium parking? So it's like somebody's got to make an auditorium parking plan. I don't care who it is. We just want to make sure that we know a parking plan is needed. And, you know. Here. So I don't know who, I mean, AB3 is gonna talk about parking plans, but I don't know where the parking, do you consider that part of the auditorium director's position?
In the past, it's been all volunteers and we haven't found anything that works yet. And we discuss paid services and it may be, paying people to help park.
But you have to have a plan. We gotta decide on the plan and we have to decide who's in charge of the plans.
This is
By event.
mainly for the program events, because the rental events,
They
they have to come up with their own.
Yeah.
People out in the, who's got to come up with their own plan?
a rental event, if they're expecting more
You're
than
gonna have a
50
wedding,
people.
you have 150 people.
So they have to
You
come
tell them
on.
what their options are. Ball field. Rent from the church and figure out how to get your people here. It's not your problem.
Maybe we should, because I know Matt had done a lot of work on it, and I know we've all had seen the different iterations and had the maps and everything else. Maybe we should kind of go over what all the options are. And if Dec15 is gonna work on that again.
Yeah.
To help figure out how we can work on this so that Sharon's not the one that has to come up with a plan.
Yeah, I mean, what I would do is do suggestions, like, yes, there's 10 performers and probably 150 tickets will be sold to somebody, but I don't want to have to come up with a parking plan and implement a parking plan when there's.
No,
going
you
to be
don't.
so
No,
much.
you don't.
You just have to make sure
But
that
they-
there is.
Yeah, but they are, you're asking strangers to come up with.
Well, you hand them a map of the available parking spots and you say, you figure it out. Tell your people, they're gonna show up here, here's where they park. This is it.
You can use.
It's just a map.
That doesn't work out.
I know it doesn't work.
It's not a plan.
Well, then make some parking here. You know the drill. Everybody wants to park.
Okay.
All right.
Tom's
Yeah.
got a
We know
couple-
we need to think about parking.
Okay.
So another one to revisit beginning of January.
Yeah, but we also need to figure out what we intend to do with the Opera of Saratoga, because they want to announce that they're gonna be here on June 2nd. They want to announce it on New Year's Eve.
Let them in.
Is it anticipated they'll sell out the joint? 300 tickets?
I don't know if they anticipate that, but knowing their subscription base and what they're doing, I would say yes, and I would ask them, I mean, I don't know. I would ask if after the subscription base and before they go on sale to the general public, I might even request a day, one day, like other organizations do, that the village people would have one day to be the next in priority for single tickets. And then they go on sale, single tickets the next day. So you would, and they would do that on their website. I think that this also would get us, their subscriber base are the people we want to have here. And I think that all of the things that we can do, that their publicity, their ticket sales, their subscriber base will only be advantageous to us. Eventually.
Okay.
It's gonna be a busy day with the golf cart.
Yeah.
What, are we doing anything else on these tonight, or we're gonna work on them and bring them in and go through?
Will we come back?
Okay.
That ends old business, moving on to new business. Ford, we've done that. Sullivan Wilson wedding, you can take that off, not because the wedding's not happening, but they're going through the contract and the whole process, so nothing is needed from the board there.
Didn't we never agreed what they were gonna do in terms of fee.
No, they're just going through the process, standard 225.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And next, McKinney's cannabis law discussion. Tom, this was Mr. Bergen. Is your item?
Yeah, it was my item because over the past couple of months, I've been noticing in the newspapers and television and following state news and whatnot, that this law about opting in or opting out of the the law, the legislature approved this year, the Cannabis and Marijuana Taxation Act, whatever it is, that we have to do, municipalities have to do something by the end of the year. And it's the end of the year. And I noticed, I think the only two local municipalities that have, I think Albany, I'm not sure if Albany County and the city opted in. Schenectady kind of did a kind of smoke and mirrors trick. I don't know what they're doing.
There's no such thing as opting in. You're
No, you have
automatically.
to opt out, I should say. Yeah, I should say, sorry. And so I thought, well, we ought to have a vote, because if we don't do anything, we are in, as I understand it. And that means that you could legally establish a marijuana dispensary or a marijuana lounge within
In our booming commercial zone.
in a booming commercial zone. You never know. And so I thought we ought to take action on it one way or the other. I don't know what you guys want to do. I don't know how I feel about it.
I don't want to opt out.
I want to opt out. I don't see any reason why we should support that kind of business here. I haven't, I smoked enough reefer all my life. Don't worry about it. I know what it feels like. But I just don't see that as an appropriate kind of businesses in a small village like Rhinebeck.
Well, frankly, I think it would be impossible to get one going here.
It might, you might be right, Peter, on the planning board. I don't know what kind of prohibit we do regarding certain kinds of businesses that might not be, if there's stipulations within the planning.
There's very few commercial properties
I
in
know.
the village, so I can't, although one of them is for sale right now.
Well, I know there is one for sale and perfect spot.
But we'd be, I think, foolish to miss out on any tax revenues.
Well, I disagree with you, Gary. I think, some people would like to draw a line in the sand between buying into something because you get money for it and or not doing it and losing some revenue. This might not be the kind of revenue that I'd like to have coming into the village. And I dispute all of these people who claim there's tens of millions of dollars in revenue for a city and town. So I don't know. I would make the motion if we needed to at some point.
Now's the time to do it. You're gonna do it.
Would make the motion. I don't know. We need a public hearing and we have to have a meeting.
What you would need to do would be to move a resolution to enact a local law to opt out and to schedule a public hearing sometime before the end of the year.
And then the board would vote on
Yes,
it, okay, after the public hearing.
yeah, well, the board will vote on your resolution tonight,
Right.
and then after the public hearing, the board would vote on whether or not to adopt the local law,
Okay.
opting out.
So that's even more of a reason why I think it's important to do this. At least let the community make it, be heard on it. So I would make a motion, whatever Tom Peterson just told me to say, that we move to opt out of this.
Pass a local law to opt out.
Local law to opt out of this and schedule a public hearing before the end of the year. And after which we would then vote on the local law proposal. Is that good enough?
Can we do that on the same day? We can do them on the same day.
Can we do
We
the
can do
hearing?
we can do the vote on the
If
same
you're talking to
day.
me, yes, I
am.
can hear it. I didn't know we were talking to the clerk.
Yes, we used to.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, because there's no time other than that, so, yeah.
And you have a 10-day posting, right? You have to post it 10 days ahead.
I'll check the time, I'll check the.
So you're somewhere between Christmas and New Year's Eve.
So if his resolution we're about to vote on doesn't pass, we don't do any of that.
Correct.
So this is our last, this is our last meeting of this month.
Unless it passes, then we have a public hearing.
Then we have to.
So we have to, so we're gonna have a public hearing like Christmas Eve or something?
Oh, whatever. Rather, we can set the
That's
tree up
right.
and come in. Come on. Sit around with that now.
Could you second as well? Yeah, second.
Point of clarification, Larry.
Who's that?
It's me, Paul.
Hang on, Paul.
Of clarification by chance?
Hang on. Can't really let you do that.
On his motion.
Well, anyway, I'm making a motion that we, a resolution that we opt out, have a public hearing, vote on the local law after the public.
I will second it so that we get a recorded vote. Discussion?
I personally don't think it's needed. We're not gonna have anywhere. By the time somebody comes up with a location to put it in the village, everybody around us will have it and people will be going there. I just think it's unnecessary to block ourselves out.
Well, I dispute that because Malta's opted out.
That's fine for them, but they're also gonna be taking that to the public. If they're gonna petition together.
Okay.
I understand your reasoning, but I would put tobacco, alcohol ahead of marijuana myself, so.
And I don't, the other thing is, I don't think trying to squeeze in a public hearing when a lot of people are gonna be out of town.
Yeah, that I
You
know,
know, it's just not giving a fair representation of the public, so if you felt that strong, nobody felt that strongly, this should get done.
I think we missed. the
Well,
boat.
yeah, and I'm, you know, I'm not gonna take the blame for missing the boat. I just noticed that we hadn't taken any
Yeah, I
action.
agree. I agree.
And so I said, well, what are we gonna do about it?
I would have preferred to hear what the village thinks about it. I have a little strong feeling one way or the other, but I think it's not gonna work that somewhere between Christmas and New Year's, we have a public hearing on this and get, you know, people's opinion. I just think it's not gonna happen. So.
So we have a motion and second.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be the only one to vote, to vote yes. I'm just gonna go home and light up a bowl.
I would like to hear what the village thought. That didn't occur to me until too late, so.
Moving on to masking. In your emails, you got the something about that with the latest regulations. I don't know if there's that much more to say about it.
As far as we're concerned, what it boils down to is everybody has to wear a mask, except in the extremely unlikely event that everybody in the room is vaccinated. And we don't have to wear a mask. But if we have one person who is unvaccinated, everybody wears a mask. We are not permitted to exclude people because of their vaccination status. You can't tell people that they can only appear remotely for that reason either. So we just got really lucky tonight.
We had been able to mix and match, it was called. That was our previous policy. If you weren't vaccinated, you wear a mask. If you were, you didn't have to. That's what basically changed Monday.
Is this part of Hopeful's law?
Yes.
So why are counties like Saratoga and some of the others saying we're not gonna enforce it?
Because they stand for law and order.
And how come you can go into Price Chopper like I've gone for the last couple of days? There's no mask.
They now require masks. Stewards, Price Chopper, and for
So this is it's a state, that's what I was wondering about. The county says we're not gonna enforce it. The village, we are incapable of enforcing it, you know, how do we enforce it?
The way I see it, if somebody comes in without a mask, they're creating a disturbing the peace, disorderly conduct, all sorts of things. That's how I would play it.
Does that go village-wide? Like at the mill or Lake Ridge? No, I mean, do we?
I kind of said Griffin's Ridge.
So Friday, we have an event in here on Friday.
Right.
So what happens?
Well, I will tell you what's going to happen Friday is a sergeant at arms is going to be at the door and everyone has to show proof of vaccination.
And if they don't,
They will not be coming in, yeah.
So they could have the card, they could have an Excelsior pass.
Yep. And budget development, once again, give you your ideas for, thoughts. You heard Johnny's, and I'll be talking to him more about that, priorities and budget thoughts for the coming year. And correspondence. Approval of minutes.
November 3rd workshop.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Discussion?
Yes.
Aye. And approval of abstract.
We have an abstract in the amount of $60,928.65. Make a motion to approve.
Discussion?
Yes.
All right. Yes.
Village attorney.
There are recent updates to the public officers law having to do with publication requirements before meetings. You have to post things on the website and have them available 24 hours beforehand. Also, any trustee can make a motion to go into executive session. This is the language that they have to follow. So pass those down.
We had laminated copies?
Wow.
Laminated copies, because you're never gonna lose them. And if it's a trustee, you have to stick them in the box. So, a resource for you.
That's not a bad idea. Village mayor has nothing to say. Trustees?
Actually, I did have something to say regarding an executive session.
Well, you could make a motion to go into executive.
Well, I was going to make the motion. I was wondering if we are going to continue with our original plan, which was to discuss salary.
Yeah.
So
I think so.
we're going into an executive session.
Yeah.
Okay.
To discuss. Pardon? Someone like to make a motion, because I don't have my laminated copy.
I guess I have to read some specific part of this. Once we go into executive session to discuss
Employment of
employment and salary of an individual.
what it says. It doesn't say salary.
Good.
Medical, financial credit or employment history of a particular person?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Second.
yes, okay.
Okay.
Discussion.
Gary, Paul is waving his
No, we gotta
Okay,
go.
public comment.
Public.
You're right.
Oh. Oh, public
I have a,
I'm sorry about that. Paul, you're not coming in too well.
now better?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to urge you on something. I think strongly that when you have a an issue that comes up for the first time during a meeting, basically, such as the cannabis, and you vote on it at the same time, I think in the future, you should have a policy that you can allow someone in the audience with short time period, you could allow to make a comment, because it's one thing when you have a discussion and it's going to be voted a future time. But to have a situation like in this situation, basically, I believe Tom made an error in his motion, because he made it for both items, stores and for lounges, and they can be separate. You actually have to opt out of each one separately. So if you make your motion for the two of them, you go into a hearing a week later or whatever it is, 10 days later, and then the board says, oh, let's allow the retail store, but not the lounge. You'd have to, I believe, I may be wrong in this, but you'd have to reschedule another public hearing. It would be moved. You couldn't do it. So to not allow someone just to at least point that out or say something, I think whenever you bring something up and you go to vote on the same night, you should allow brief comments from the public. You certainly allowed comments from the public when there was no vote at stake during the meeting, which I have no objection to. I think that's great, actually. But to not allow it when you're about to vote on something you're just bringing up that time, well, it's moot now, because I believe I couldn't hear people voting, all of them, but I believe that motion didn't pass, so it doesn't matter. But had it passed, you could run into trouble. So I really think you should reconsider the policy, so that when there's something brought up and you vote on it, you give a brief period of time during that process to hear from anyone in the room. That's it.
Thank you, Paul. Your point is well taken, and it actually does have to be two separate resolutions. But going forward, I'm hoping that it doesn't come up, that we will have the notice ahead of time, more notice than that.
Yeah, because it's hard to comment on at the beginning of the meeting, when you don't really know what people are going to be talking about. Anyway, that's it. Otherwise, I think everything's fine. Hello, everybody. I didn't mean to butt in during a meeting, but I just was concerned about that.
Hey, anybody here, public comment? Okay, start over here. Okay, Eric?
The policy document that was discussed today, I know there was a bunch of documents announced, but I don't think that one was included.
The use policy?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be, yeah.
The use one? Yeah,
It was?
it was the first one we did. Then we did the job description after.
Okay, there was a bunch of documents in there.
The use policy went to the board a couple weeks ago, was supposed to be up before this week's meeting.
Well, for the document you guys made-
Specifically talked about that.
And I didn't see it.
Yeah,
Well,
you-
I'm just saying, it makes it, it was up there.
so this document
I
you were
printed
talking
it last night, but it says around Lake auditorium rental policy.
That's like a header that's stuck on every page for some reason.
What was that?
It's like it's a header that's stuck on
Yeah,
that.
no, I
document.
understand.
Okay, so it was in the packet you sent
Yeah.
out yesterday or today?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I just missed it. Thank you.
Okay, Ronnie?
Yeah, basically the auditorium use policy, about taking so Scottish Standard accent. The auditorium use policy basically says the village board can do what it wants. It can waive or modify a policy without notice. So what use then are the safeguards that you've outlined in that policy? If you can just simply waive them without notice or notification.
We do have that in a lot of the policies, in that this is the idea, this is the policy we're trying to stick with, and if something needed to be changed, based on the circumstances, we would, but you couldn't just wholesale say, not gonna do it. Like the community room, for example, has, it's like 5 sentences, the community use policy, but it also says the board can, modify things as needed.
Yeah, you can change that policy whenever you wish. I mean, you saw how quickly 9:30 became 10. So what's the point of the policy?
Well, it gives us flexibility, whereas, so we're not locked in. When there's.
So basically, the local residents take what you give us. And that's fine, but I mean, call it what it is.
Well, we have to have a starting point, we have to have something that's outlined, and when an event comes up, does it fit all the parameters? Yes, then the
And
policy
then you
applies.
ignore
If there's something, because life's not that cut and dry. There's always gonna be something that doesn't fit into exactly the policy we have. And it just gives us the flexibility, where it's not that we're gonna make decisions willy-nilly, just act that, X this. We're gonna stick to the policy as much as possible, but if there's a situation that just doesn't fit, we have to make some decisions about it.
So you might change the decibel.
No.
Now, that's
That's
a,
not-
that's a
not
public
that's
law.
Local law.
local law.
Yeah, local law doesn't apply to outdoor.
Right.
You guys keep citing the law, but it doesn't
I
apply to
would
outdoor.
hope that the crazy Swedes never see Round Lake again. But, I mean, yes, what do? Do you waive the decibel level?
That's what you did for the bands playing at the mill. You wandered around at night listening to using, I assume you ran on the bottom, I don't know, you did decibel meter. In the middle of the night to prove that it wasn't over X number of decibels in Griffin's Ridge. 30 feet in the freaking auditorium. They live half a mile from the mill.
Well,
You guys are wildly inconsistent on this stuff.
Well, I'm hoping that we use a little more common sense when we plan some of these events. And I think that's why we're jumping through so many hoops here, is to try to get some level, some balance, so we don't find ourselves in these positions anymore. And that's what
Well,
I
you know,
hope.
I didn't book them either time they played here, but I will say, I did attend the first time they were here, and there was a lot of village residents there, and they were all having a really good time. So, you know, it may be now we've decided we don't want to do that, or people got more pissed off, or they got louder, or I don't know what happened, but I was there the first time, and it was well received. So, you know, things change and people move in and out of the village and whatever, but, you know, I think we do need to figure out how we want to do that going forward. And if that was too much and we don't want to do it again, that's fine. But there was, you know, the first time they played, again, I didn't book them, they're not my friends, I didn't pay them, I didn't make any of those decisions, but I was there and a lot of people were enjoying it. So.
Okay, thanks.
Listen to it, even though you didn't want to.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie.
Okay.
Somebody else back here, Rick?
Yep. I'd like to go back and revisit the whole Peck Avenue thing. I know everybody's probably tired of talking about it, but it's really something that is impacting us from a safety standpoint and a liability standpoint. And it's not the board's concern that we were kind of, in our opinion, misled when we bought the lot. And, you know, there was these beautiful stones that were set up there to kind of give us the illusion that that was a line, a property line. And so, okay, lesson learned. But, you know, we still have people that wander onto our property. We still have children that are jumping all over, and not all the time, but we have people that just wander on our property, like their dogs loose as they're coming through the woods and, you know, run around our backyard. And it's a privacy issue as well. I mean, I don't think any one of you would appreciate the fact while you're in the backyard enjoying your day, having dogs running to bothering your company. It happens. So if you were to put this split rail fence on this 15-foot piece of property, given that you're going to have a 2-foot setback, so that would be 11 feet, right? But within that 11-foot piece of property from the woods out to Village Circle North is you've got some obstacles there. One is the neighbors have their landscape that's there that they didn't put there, but the developer did, and that could be moved. However, you also have to take into account that the neighbors and ourselves have our utilities that run right into that 15-foot piece of property into a utility handhole and also the stub out for the communications cable, telephone, what have you.
So those things have to be taken into account. And if you put a split rail fence in there, you're gonna have all that mapped out. And if something does happen where you have a utility issue, it's gonna get ripped up. And that's not uncommon based upon what has happened recently in Village Circle North, where utilities were found on another piece of property. Right, Peter?
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, I just, there is a path that goes from Peck Avenue and turns and goes right onto the Zim Smith Trail before it hits that culvert, which is a dangerous thing for kids to be walking on anyway, because there is no railings on it or anything, and they can fall into the, you know, they could fall into the stream. And during the summer months, it's not a big concern, but you know, in the spring and in the fall, and when it's wet, that thing runs pretty good. So it's a concern. It's a safety concern and there's a liability for not just, I mean, we're talking 4 taxpayers here that have this issue with this particular problem. Karen and myself on one, and my neighbors on the other. And I am not speaking for my neighbors, but based upon my conversations with them, I'll let them talk about it at a later time. But I would ask that we please think about this a little bit more because you've already got accesses everywhere, and this small piece of and the other question is that when it comes to maintenance, right now we're doing the maintenance. My neighbor and I split it. You know, we fertilize it, we mow it, we water it, we do all that. And we don't have a problem doing it. We will continue to do that. And we keep it nice. And I think anybody that has gone through there can see that. But if a split rail fence goes up, now you've got weed whacking involved, and you've got, and then the mowing has to go around it, and who's going to do that? You know, is the village going to do that? You know, I don't know if I want to take on that responsibility then, and I don't know if my neighbor will either.
The village will.
Oh, the village will? So if it gets to a certain, okay.
The answer is yes, the village will.
The village would, and I think the answer that we gave you guys tonight was, we're gonna look at this to try to figure out what's real down there in terms of public access. So maybe it'll be on the agenda next month.
Yeah, I just got an email from Ross, who lives next door, so I shared it. It's pretty long, so
we'll
I'll share that with you.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at it.
You're more than welcome
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
So, I mean,
But you know, I don't want excavators on my lawn moving rocks.
well, yeah.
And you're not going to get an excavator up that easement because of the utility pole the post that is almost dead center in that 50 foot.
We'll look at it.
Johnny already said he would come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how he's going to do that, but
I don't even. So look at it.
he's a very sharp guy. I'm sure he can figure out a way to do it, but you know.
Any more?
Yeah, I just want the board to be aware of the fact that the house at the end of New York Avenue is sold. And Scott Barley has an engineer approaching the village to develop 18 houses at the top of New York Avenue and 3 houses on Morris Road.
No plans as yet, no action.
Oh, yeah, plans have been submitted. Wants to go to the planning board in February.
Oh, are these plans available in the village office?
No, there's only, they're at the scratch point right now.
So we haven't got
Conceptual.
formal.
They haven't had a formal application, although he's been talking to, you know, the issue is water. One of the big issues is water, and the issue, he's been talking to Levant Engineering about it, and I emailed Levant Engineering to say, don't talk to them anymore.
All right, so when we see a proposal, right now it's just.
But I just want you to make aware of the fact. put something on the table.
Peter, I hope it doesn't go on the planning board agenda until his conceptual plan complies with the cluster zoning law, because the last one submitted did not.
And it's so conceptual that we don't, we looked at it today and said, he's not ready. He initially said he'd like to go in January. I said, you're not there. He said February. I said, show us. And so if he got his act together, he'll come in February.
Okay, thank you. One quick thing before we go into executive session. Be it resolved that the Village Board of Round Lake approves the fire department election of December 13th, 2021, in which Frank Mazzo was elected chief, Ed Cameron was elected first assistant chief, and Richard Burke was elected second assistant chief. Resolved by the mayor, seconded by Mr. Bergen. Discussion? Both? Aye.
There was somebody else.
I just have a quick, Marta says tentatively plan a program in the community room in January. I'm not sure what the procedure is for getting an update on that. At this point. Where was small?
Email Kim.
Okay.
Did we get Amy still?
We have Amy still?
I speak on back to the auditorium again, I'm sorry, but the parking, saying it's responsibility of the people who rent it, doesn't work. It's never worked. It's not an acceptable solution. They don't care. Most of the times they're not coming back again. And
They have to submit a plan.
but who's there? Nobody's there to make sure they're.
We are now having someone that is responsible on site. We are doing what we can to do that.
But the person on site can't be responsible for the parking outside.
And all we can do is get a plan
Peter,
together.
chastise them.
ET3 is going to look into their resources. We are going to, as we said in previous meetings, give people their options when they want to do a rental. These are the places you can park. This is how many it holds. Figure out how to do it. You need to come back to the plan.
And
Carpathian, we have worked with Carpathian and they have worked with us. They have gotten their own volunteers. They direct people where to go. We get better at it as we do it.
And
Well,
we've
no,
given,
it's been improved, but it's been a lot of him and Gary working with Carpe Diem, repeatedly going out there to check on them and stuff. And that's for somebody who's there for 10 years. It's taken like 10 years to get them to be marginally good with a lot of oversight by people who shouldn't have to be doing it.
but we've also given Bob Clayton free hand to
Yes,
give
I'll just
tickets.
maybe use different too, but I'm just saying, like, just using the comment that it falls under responsibility, if we just don't care. They're gonna do, the people who show up don't care, they're gonna do what's easiest for them. And it becomes more work for Bob, chasing them around, circling like a vulture to circle them, because those little, like, literally last summer, city got out of their car and moved a no parking sign to create their own parking spot. I mean, they just don't care. And there's nobody there to necessarily stop them from doing that.
I'm just, that's the part where I think really trying to work on is how we enforce this a little bit better. We don't know what the magic bullet is. Obviously, but, we're trying to make each time try to do a little bit better, so.
I mean, how do you commit to a plan and then they not follow through with it, or they're caught in just not following their own plan? I don't know if that makes them subject to fines, if that's something we need to build into the policy, or, is that they won't be allowed to work again. It's another option.
Thank you, Amy. Another motion to enter executive session?
I thought we already passed it.
Yeah, we already passed it.
Thank you all.
Good night, folks. Take some cookies.
Sharon.
Gary, is this for salaries or is it for fire?
We're gonna.
Thanks, Tom.
Oh, you're welcome. Where would you want?
I'm gonna take a cookie.
Oh, I'm taking two.
Slide that thing over here.
Not for you. Not for you.
Oh, I have lots of sugar.